Hi, and thank you for visiting my channel. For more information, kindly subscribe and follow. Now let's get started. Solo Sikoa made some huge demands on the latest episode of WWE SmackDown ahead of his match against Roman Reigns. The two stars will collide in a tribal combat on Raw next week. The leader of the Bloodline 2.0 confronted Paul Heyman on the Blue brand this week during an in-ring segment. The Wiseman reminded Solo how the latter put him through the announce table in Madison Square Garden the last time they were in the ring together. Solo Sikoa asked the Phoenix crowd to acknowledge him and told Heyman that it was finally time for him to acknowledge the truth. The Bloodline leader asked Paul about the favor he owed CM Punk. Sikoa also wanted a favor and said he needed someone he could trust to hold the Ula Fala during his match against Roman Reigns. He wanted someone who loved his family and wouldn't disrespect the Ula Fala. Solo Sikoa said if the OTC beats him on Raw, Paul Heyman will put the Ula Fala around his neck, and he, Solo, will acknowledge Roman as his tribal chief. However, Sikoa mentioned that when he beats Reigns, the Wiseman will put the Ula Fala around his neck, and everyone will know that he owns it and that he also owns Heyman. He also said that Roman Reigns will have no choice but to acknowledge him. Paul Heyman was speechless. He just dropped the mic and left the ring. It was the night everyone had been waiting for, a night of reckoning for the Anoa'i family. WWE Raw kicked off with an electric atmosphere as fans packed the arena, buzzing with anticipation for the impending clash of titans. Solo Sikoa, the enforcer of the Bloodline, had promised a message that would shake the foundation of the family empire. As the pyrotechnics exploded and the theme song blared, the camera panned to a stern-looking Solo Sikoa, flanked by Paul Heyman. The tension in the air was palpable as Solo made his way to the ring, his usual stoic demeanor masking the turmoil brewing inside. Heyman, clutching the WWE Universal Championship, whispered frantically to Solo, but the enforcer paid him no mind. The ring, adorned with tribal decorations, symbolized the gravity of the situation. Solo stood in the center, gripping a microphone tightly. His voice, calm yet menacing, echoed through the arena. "I've been silent for too long," Solo began, his deep voice commanding attention. "For months, I've stood by, watching as the Bloodline crumbles under the weight of lies, betrayal, and selfishness." The crowd erupted into cheers, sensing the confrontation brewing. Solo glanced briefly at the hard camera, his piercing gaze sending a message to Roman Reigns, wherever the tribal chief might be. "This family is built on respect, on loyalty," Solo continued. "But lately, it's been about one thing, Roman Reigns and his ego. Tribal chief? No. You're just a man clinging to power, afraid of losing everything." The crowd roared as Solo's words cut through the tension like a knife. Heyman's face turned pale, his lips trembling as he tried to intervene. "My tribal chief." "Shut up, Paul." Solo snapped, silencing Heyman immediately. "This isn't about you. It's about what's right." Solo turned his attention to the Titantron, where a pre-recorded message from Roman Reigns began to play. Seated on his luxurious throne, Reigns looked every bit the dominant leader, but there was an underlying weariness in his eyes. "Solo," Roman began, his voice dripping with condescension, "you don't dictate terms to me. I am the tribal chief. I've carried this family, this company, on my back. And you? You're just the muscle. Know your place." The crowd booed loudly as Reigns' words echoed. Solo smirked, shaking his head. "Roman, you're right about one thing," Solo said. "You've carried this family, but only for your benefit. You've used us as pawns in your game of domination. That ends now." Solo raised his head high, his voice unwavering. "At Tribal Combat, it won't just be about the Universal Championship. It'll be about the soul of the Bloodline. If you lose, Roman, you step down as Tribal Chief. Forever." The crowd erupted into a deafening cheer as Solo laid down the gauntlet. The camera cut to Heyman, who looked like he might faint. "Solo, you can't," Heyman stammered, but Solo wasn't done. "And if I lose," Solo continued, his voice hardening, "I'll leave the Bloodline for good." No turning back. The tension was shattered by a familiar theme song. The Usos' entrance music hit, and the crowd went wild as Jimmy and Jey Uso, the original cornerstones of the Bloodline, made their way to the ring. Both men wore expressions of concern and frustration, clearly torn between family loyalty and the chaos that had unfolded over the past year. Jimmy grabbed a microphone first. "Solo, man, what are you doing?" he asked, his voice tinged with desperation. "This isn't the way." "Jimmy, you of all people should understand," Solo fired back. "You've seen what Roman's done to this family. You've been betrayed, manipulated, cast aside. This isn't just about me, it's about us." Jey stepped forward, his fiery demeanor on full display. "And what happens when you lose, Us?" he demanded. "You think Roman's just gonna let you walk away? You think he's not gonna destroy you?" "I'm ready to take that chance," Solo replied. "Are you?" The crowd hung on every word as the three brothers faced off, the emotional weight of the moment palpable. The Titantron flickered back to life, revealing Roman Reigns standing in the backstage area, championship draped over his shoulder. His expression was unreadable, but the fire in his eyes was undeniable. "You think you can challenge me, Solo?" Roman asked, his voice cold. "You think you can take what I've built? You're nothing without me." Solo stared at the screen, his jaw set. "We'll see about that." Roman smirked. "Fine. At Tribal Combat, you'll get your match. But when I'm done with you, there won't be anything left. Not of you, not of your so-called rebellion, not of the Bloodline." The Titantron went dark, leaving the crowd buzzing with anticipation. As the segment wound down, Paul Heyman tried one last time to mediate. "Gentlemen, please," he pleaded, his voice shaking. "This family doesn't need more division. We can work this out." But Solo wasn't interested. He grabbed Heyman by the collar, lifting him off the ground. "Paul, your time as the weasel in this family is over. Stay out of my way." Heyman collapsed to the mat as Solo released him, gasping for air. Jimmy and Jey looked at Solo, their expressions conflicted. "We're with you, Us," Jimmy finally said, extending a hand. "But this better be worth it." As the brothers left the ring together, the crowd erupted into a chant of Solo. Solo! The enforcer of the Bloodline had made his stand, and the WWE Universe was ready for what promised to be an explosive tribal combat. The show ended with Solo standing tall in the ring, his ultimatum ringing in the ears of fans and superstars alike. Tribal Combat was no longer just a match, it was a battle for the very identity of the Bloodline. Would Roman Reigns finally be dethroned as tribal chief? Or would Solo Sikoa's rebellion end in heartbreak? One thing was certain, the Anoa'i family's legacy would never be the same.